started kindergarten in 1968. Stayed here until 6th grade, went to Woodbury and Shaker Heights High School. And I have a lot of good memories of Moreland.
Ken Bravo, and I figured out today I graduated from Moreland School in 1954.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Smith. I was a student at Moreland from about 1960 to 1965. So from kindergarten through maybe middle, 4th grade, when we moved across Van Aken onto Chadbourne in the Onaway School District.
My name is Lee Kusid, and my family lived on Menlo Road. And I was the first of 3 brothers to come here to Moreland. That's where everybody walked to and from lunch and back to school again.
Gerald Gregory. My family moved into the Shaker area in 1966.
Hi, Chiquita Montgomery. Our family moved winter of 1964. It's interesting just remember those details. And I don't know why we landed in Shaker Heights. We were just very young children, and this is where we were living.
My name is Annette Tucker Sutherland. I came to Moreland as a 6th grader in 1970 as part of the voluntary busing program the first year it started.
Underwood, Mary. I came to Moreland in 1970, and the principal was LaSaur Green. And I knew her from a different experience, and I was teaching in New Jersey. And when she knew I was coming back to Cleveland, she wanted me to come here. So that's how I ended up at Moreland.
Charlene Nevins. I was wide-eyed about the whole thing, I have to tell you. I've been getting my training to be a teacher, and then all of a sudden here I am, and I've got a classroom.
My name is Earlene Hooper. We didn't have any money, but we were able to move into Moreland, which was a nice neighborhood. The only problem was that when we started moving in, the white people started running.
My name is Sam Hooper. I went to Moreland School from 2nd grade to 6th grade, graduated in 1969. And we moved here in Shaker about 64, 65.
My family moved in 1963, and that was the year I was born. Technically they moved in 1962, and I was born in 1963, and I stayed here until I was 50.
I was an infant, so it would have been, I was born in 42, so I grew up, I was a young child in the area before I came here for nursery school.
I started kindergarten here, so it would have been around in the late 50s or early 1960, yeah. Menlo first, we had rented a duplex, and then we moved 1 block over to Pennington. My parents bought their first house there.
I was a West Sider. I had trouble getting here the first time. So.
And it was a permanent move because we had lived in the Glenville neighborhood and had moved a couple of times until we got it right, moving to Ludgate.
I lived in the Onaway district, and my parents took us all to a downtown church in Huff, and they were recruited by people who knew that they were not afraid of integration. And my mother asked me if I wanted to go to Moreland, and I said sure. So I came over with a number of kids from Onaway, including the daughter of the former principal who had recently died of cancer. That was Orville Jenkins, and his daughter Pam was in my class.
I might say that we lived in, before we moved into Shaker, we lived on 115th Street in Cleveland. And my husband was very particular about his children, so so was I, but he lost his mind sometimes if he felt like his children were being mistreated. and I was carrying Paula, and had gone to the doctor. I was still teaching, and we'd gone to the doctor, and we had some time left, and we went down to Rosedale School, which is right down the street from where we lived, and we wanted to visit Sam's class, and the principal said, "You don't have an appointment. You can't come in here." Well, she didn't say it exactly like that, but my husband took it the wrong way. And he said that if you don't let me into my son's classroom, I'm going to call the superintendent and the mayor and the governor this day. And they were really startled, but I was kind of laughing because I didn't think it'd go that far. But he may have, I don't know. Anyway, this teacher that told us we couldn't visit the classroom, she said, "All right, Mr. Hoop, don't do that, Mr. Hoop, you don't do that." And she ran down the hall, and then she ran back. She said, "You can come to this classroom anytime you want to come. Anytime you want to come." So when we walked out of the building, Sam says, Daddy said, "I don't want to go back to that school anymore." He said, "We got to get out of here." And that's when he made preparations to move to Shaker.
Charles Thornton.
Mr. Jenkins, I think, and Mrs. Green. I don't remember the principals. I wasn't in the office. I know Mrs. Green had some great activities. I ended up going to Quebec with our French class. Yeah. Quebec, we went, it was our 6th grade year, and we had started taking French in 4th grade, and we went to Quebec, and we went to a maple farm. And they packed these troughs full of snow and then poured hot maple syrup. And you took these tongue depressor things and we rolled the maple syrup and ate it. Well, after 2 bites, I was good. After like 150 bites from some people, they were absolutely sick, and all you heard was the teachers calling, "So-and-so, your daughter is sick. So-and-so, your son is sick," because they had eaten way too much maple syrup. But that was like one of the highlights of Moreland history. Noisy, we had, it was just so many people there, and it was so much fun, and I just loved it. And I was with my friends, and there were 4 of us in the room, and we were jumping all over the beds and just having a great time, and just being able to see the different sites, I had a ball.
Orville Jenkins.
Well, that's easy. Orville Jenkins, because I'm holding a book that it actually has his name here, Orville Jenkins, principal. And he lived on Scottsdale, right, just very close to where we lived on Pennington.
And I wanted to share a incident that happened to me when I was in the 3rd grade. My 3rd grade teacher was Miss Wiley, and Orville Jenkins was the principal at Moreland. And one of the kids in my 3rd grade class was a new student, and he was not a pleasant person. I don't know why. And the male students decided to have what we called a hate club, so he wouldn't play with us at recess or anything like that. And again, he was the new student in that class. Nobody knew him, but I don't think he knew anybody. Well, this lasted about a week, this hate club. I was in charge of it. And Miss Wiley told me Mr. Jenkins wanted to see me in his office. I couldn't imagine why, but of course when the principal wants to see you, you go. And I went there, I waited a few minutes, and he motioned me to come in his office, and I sat down. I think that was the first time probably I was in the principal's office, actually for anything. And he explained to me that Barry, this was the other student, complained that the other students in Miss Wiley's class were mean to him, and that there was this hate club, and I was scared out of my mind. I couldn't believe this. And I said to him, he wanted to hear my side. I said, well, Mr. Jenkins, I don't know what you're talking about. This must be somebody who looks just like me, who may have done this. And he says, well, it's possible. And he says to me, he says, Lee, when you see that person who looks like you, please tell him that I want the hate club disbanded. I get back to class, and everybody, of course, wants to know what happened in the principal's office. Everybody, including me, thought I fooled Mr. Jenkins. But that was the best I could come up with on short notice. I didn't know what anything was going to be about. The hate club was abolished, and everybody got along for the rest of the school year. And he was so calm about it. I didn't live too far from him. He lived over on Scottsdale, right near East 154th with his family. But he was a nice, down-to-earth guy. And I went out to see his name on the list of the superintendents. I didn't realize he was there in '56, because I would have been 7 years old. So maybe I was in first grade, second grade, third. He hadn't been there a long time. But it was a very interesting thing. When I graduated in 1961, he took me aside and he says, Lee, you remember that conversation we had when you were in the third grade? I said, yes, I remember it. He says, you know, I knew you were the one, didn't you? Really? I honestly, he fooled me the whole time. I mean, everything worked out well, but I mean, and I couldn't imagine that I said it. It just came to my head. Maybe I should blame it on somebody who looks like me. But when you're in the third grade, I don't think you think very well about these things. And I really think I've told my children this story about, like lying to the principal or something, when they were in school. But that was my one story, and it was a classic. And he was such a nice guy, really a nice guy. And thank you for letting me share it with you.
That the teachers, I mean, it was a real community, and there didn't seem to be any major egos. There were just people that liked to teach with each other. And LaSore was new to Shaker. She had been in Cleveland. And so it just seemed to work. And then after LaSore was with Ken Buchanan, he was just outstanding. And the kids loved him, and the teachers loved him, and the parents loved him. So I taught for a second. And then one year I did a second-third combo. It was difficult. The class was larger than we were used to having, but it worked. And like Mrs. Hooper, I had their daughter, their younger daughter, for 2 years as a second, and we're still friends. And her brother playing. So
I recall the very first day we were there. I went in to meet the faculty, and we were received very warmly, and the girls became very involved, and so we were going from one school to the other school, but one room to the other room, but I enjoyed working with the parents at Malvern. I enjoyed working with the teachers, and I enjoyed working with Moreland. I just had such a great day today because so many of the teachers which I had not seen for a period of time, just last year when I was in a nursing facility, I did get a chance to see couple of the teachers were in the nursing facility, and they recognized me before I did them. Anyway, Malvern and Moreland were good starters for my children.
And they had been, I'll tell you the most amazing thing that happened at the beginning of that year. There was this special alphabet that they were using, the ITA, Initial Teaching Alphabet, was designed to make beginning to read easier. Well, they had decided not to do it anymore. And they made that decision right around the time that the beginning of the school year was happening. And so at first I didn't know for sure which alphabet I was going to be using. So I'm trying to put together a kindergarten classroom without knowing what alphabet I'm using. Well, then the decision was made that no, they weren't going to use ITA after all, because you had to have custom-made books. The kids couldn't go to the library and get books. They had to have this special collection of books to use. So then we went to the library and got regular books. But, you know, starting the year without knowing which alphabet you're using was really stunning. But once we got rolling, it worked out well. I was very fortunate to be in a classroom next to Betty Scher, who was a veteran kindergarten teacher. So she really helped me a lot to get accustomed to what was going on and to help me to get my feet on the ground. One of my first, I believe he was in my first class, Darrell Bell, who was one of the speakers today. It's been so fun to see him again and talk with him and remember those days. It's a really long time ago. They were just so happy to be there. I remember Darrell, he loved to ride around the room on this little scooter toy. And I think about what an interesting thing that was, that we were able to let the kids be that free in the classroom. And they were just fun. They were really happy to be in school, and we just had a good time. I taught kindergarten at Moreland, oh gosh, I'd have to look it up, a number of years, and then I transitioned to first grade, and I took a class that had been my kindergarten class and took them to first grade. And then I transitioned again and took a group of first graders on to second grade. And then I taught second for a while. It was something new every day. It was very challenging, but it was a lot of fun. And I had great colleagues. It was great, fun to get to know all the other teachers in the building. And I had a pet rabbit. Somebody gave us a rabbit. So Sniffers became our classroom pet. And that was great fun. We had a lot of fun with Sniffers. And then Sniffers was succeeded by Trilby, and then Morley. So I had a series of rabbits. Great fun with rabbits in the classroom. Well, it was a good thing for them to learn about. They learned about how to care for an animal, what the animal needed. We learned that we could, in fact, litter train a rabbit, and so the rabbit could be running around the classroom. We also learned what the rabbit liked to do, and of course, chewing on things is what rabbits like to do. So when the rabbit would be out, the kids would put their feet up on the crossbar of their desk so that Trilby would not chew up their shoestrings, because rabbits, you know, a shoestring is perfect. An extension cord, an electrical cord is too, so we had to learn to put the cords out of the way so the rabbit didn't chew them up. I taught at Moreland, kindergarten, first, second, and then Head Start. And that was in a classroom that was down on the lower level. And that was quite an adventure too. I did that for several years. And then they closed the Head Start program in Shaker. This was the only classroom, the only Head Start classroom we had. And so I moved over to Boulevard School. And while I was there at Boulevard, I taught second grade. And then they did this school reorganization, and I ended up at Mercer. So I taught at Mercer for several years.
With the teaching staff, yes, we really were. I mean, the person I came with, when I got married 2 years after I started here, and there was a whole table of teaching colleagues, and we've been friends since. We would travel together, so it was great. I left Moreland a couple years before it closed. I went to Fernway, and they needed a first grade teacher, and there was something happened here, so I made the choice to go. I think it's a place where they felt comfortable and they learned, and it was supportive, and I think you can tell from when they, you know, come back and see people.
It was an important part of the community, and it was a very, it was a community itself. It was, to me, it was such a place of embracing everyone. And the special events that we would have, you know, the community would attend, and it just seemed like a mini neighborhood.
I had Mrs. Sheen. I think that was my kindergarten teacher. Then Miss Adler was first grade. Second grade was Mrs. Silver. Third grade was Mrs. Ballack, who got married and became Mrs. Gessler. Fourth grade, I started out with Mr. Facella and then went to Mrs. Shaheen. Fifth grade, I had Mrs. Shaheen again because we had fourth, fifth grade classes. At some point, I think in fourth grade, they started splitting the classes, so you had third, fourth grade classes, fourth, fifth, and fifth, sixth. So I had Mrs. Shaheen twice, and then for sixth grade, I had Mrs. Houck. Mrs. Shaheen, I just remembered, she, in the beginning of the class, when we first started school, she had these squares of fabric. It was a piece of fabric that was broken out into squares. And she said, each person take a square and draw on it. Draw anything you want on it. And then when we went to take the pictures, she had made a dress out of it. So everybody's, had something for the dress. Like it was long sleeves, and it came down below her knee, and it was just all our art on the dress. And it was just so amazing. I just thought that was incredible that she did that. So I really like that. That was my second favorite memory.
I mean, I think all of the teachers were good teachers. I think I was in third grade when I had polio. And so I missed a bunch of school, but the school was very accommodating. And I remember people coming to my home when I got out of the hospital to give me tutoring before I came back. I'm not sure if they were teachers or tutors. I have a sense they were teachers, but I can't really recall. It's been a long time.
And I came from the Cleveland Public Schools, but when I got to Moreland, we were doing a whole bunch of different stuff. We'd be going on field trips to the Cleveland Art Museum. We were going to see the orchestra. And then along with that came getting into sports and those kinds of things. My sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Braun, she only taught 1 year, because I think that was usually when you go to the next level, that was a transition year. So, she kept things grounded or whatever. Should have kept in contact with her because I think she had moved in to Wisconsin. I got some stories. I've got some stories about going to the orchestra or whatever and coming back, and Mr. Jenkins wasn't too happy about it, and I had nothing to do with it, but us being there or whatever. So, like I said, it just was a great experience. And then also playing baseball. One of my Little League coaches, didn't realize it then, was Al Rosen. Rosen played for the Indians. Didn't know it because he made me a catcher, because I think we could have started playing in either fifth or sixth. Was it sixth grade? I think you could start playing sports or whatever, and didn't realize it till afterwards. Whatever. He made me a catcher, so that's something that stays with me. I'll brag about that all day long. No, I stopped in high school. I just played basketball and football and lettered in those two sports. But I could have played baseball. I wish I had. So I should have went for a three sports letterman, but I didn't have a chance to do that.
I just have fond memories walking to school. This was like 64 to 68. My third and fourth grade teachers, Mrs. Beachy in third grade. And I remember she taught me cursive, because coming from the Cleveland schools, we were just a tiny bit behind, so I had to learn cursive real quick, and I did. Fourth grade was Mr. Borsey, and I just remember doing fun projects, doing art projects, or putting things up on the bulletin board that projects that we were working on. Don't know anything specific, but I just know that it was always collaborative projects that we were working on. Fifth and sixth grade, for some reason, I don't remember a whole lot. I do remember during graduation that we were singing songs from Oliver, and the teacher I had was Mrs. Manning. The fifth grade teacher, for some reason, I don't remember her name, but sixth grade, I just remember the graduation and our songs, and then moving on to Woodbury. So it's I'm just so glad that we landed where we landed, because the main thing was for us to get a good education, and that's what we got.
So I have Mrs. Kriegsfeld for sixth grade. I remember exactly where our classroom was. And she was an amazing teacher. She is still, to this day, my favorite teacher ever. She started us with Mesopotamia. We did a special project on ancient Rome. After that, I don't remember. I'm trying to think. I remember some things, but not topics. When I look back on my year in Moreland, I remember we were encouraged to start a business, and we made these boards that had little brads or nails on them, and you could wrap rubber bands and twine around them to make patterns. And for some reason that was a fad, I guess. And we made those, manufactured those as a business. I learned how to mimeograph the school newsletter. It was the first year that I had been encouraged to have lunch at school, so that was a new experience. It was a really good year. I don't recall any problems with feeling part of the community, despite it being my first year here and a lot of people coming from busing from all over the community. We did sleepovers at each other's houses. All the girls in my class slept over at my house in the Onaway district one weekend. It was a really wonderful year. I remember class parties where I learned to dance to the Jackson 5, which is not something I had been exposed to at Onaway. We did some theater things. Mr. Hall was the other 6th grade teacher, and he was the one who really encouraged theater experiences. So I look back on it as a really wonderful year.
And Moreland was a great transition from school in Cleveland, and I still maintain a lot of friendships from those times, which is really cool. My 5th grade teacher was here today, Mr. Marvin Posdel, so that was really nice to reconnect with him again. And glad he's still in the neighborhood. I was recounting how somebody today, how I was so upset when my little sister was born because I wanted a little brother. And I threw my books down and had a little tantrum when I came home and found out. So my parents were kind enough to appease me and let me name her. And so at the time, I was totally enthralled with a girl in my class named Emily Dakin. So I named her Emily, and her second name, her middle name was from my 3rd grade teacher, who I also adored, and I think we went to her wedding, Miss Ford, and her first name was Elizabeth, so I wasn't thrilled on Elizabeth, but her middle name is Marie. So we chose her middle name as Marie for Emily, Emily Marie Hooper. And she's my little sister who's doing great things in Chicago now. And so yeah, that's definitely a Moreland story. I still think of Emily Dakin every time I drive by her house on Milverton today. And it's just all the history in this area and this building.
I can't imagine growing up in a neighborhood that is not diverse. I really can't. On my street, I lived next to the Graffingers, who were from Germany. I lived across the street from a Jewish family. I lived across the street from a black family. Then there were the Kellys, who were an interracial family. And we had Jewish people and black people and German and Jewish, and it just didn't matter because we all got along, and it was just a great neighborhood, and I really loved our community. Yeah. I think it impacted who I am. I can be cynical, but I really, really try to find the good in everybody. The good in everybody. And sometimes it's hard to find the good in everybody, but I just try to find a positive light in everybody that I meet and everybody that I come across. And I always try to say hello to people, even if they're not saying hello to me, because I want to treat people the way I would want to be treated. And if I'm in a new neighborhood or a new environment, I just want to reach out and say hi to somebody who you never know how you're going to affect their day.
let's think about those times. The neighborhood was changing. There was an influx of African Americans to the neighborhood, working African families, and it just was different. And I think he was kind of like the first principal that kind of really dealt with it, because I don't think you really had that at any of the other elementary schools in the district.
I think that I was so comfortable with being around people who were not like me in terms of religious orientation, skin color, socioeconomic resources, that carried all the way through Shaker. I was very comfortable in each situation I was ever in. I got to college and I looked around and said, where are all the black people? This is weird. I went to Duke University in North Carolina. And I think that I had some strange experiences in college with confronting racism in a way that I hadn't seen before. And I think my experiences growing up in Shaker helped me face that and say, this is wrong. I'm not going to be pressured or bullied into not being friends with people that I don't want to be friends with. I was always comfortable, and I find myself now when I'm out in the community doing some of the volunteer work that I do, and I'm over in the Moreland community, I feel like I found my people sometimes. It's comfortable.
And it's great to be able to reconnect, to be able to honor, what we have here and have built here through the busing and everything. I didn't get bused. Both my sisters got bused to Malvern from Moreland, and but we were part of all that discussion and everything, which we've talked about before. But yeah, this is the place. And when I walk up and down these stairs, I can feel, walking up and down these stairs as a little kid, I knew the custodians. We knew both the custodians by first name. They were two brothers, Curtis, I forget his brother's name. Mr. Jenkins, Orville Jenkins, was our principal back then. We went to his funeral at Church of the Savior. And redheaded guy, real nice guy. And so, yeah, it's great to honor Moreland, and great that we still have the building intact, that we can still use it and have our memories.
Yeah, so those are my memories at Moreland. I love being here. I loved going to Shaker. I love being in this neighborhood. This was my school. I lived on Milverton. I walked straight up Milverton and into the parking lot. It's so different now, I remember Gays used to be on the corner, and Baskin Robbins was right across the street. And let's see, that was Pick and Pay right across the street. And there was Little Cleaners, and then there was Glenn's, Mr. Glenn's. It was a candy store, which I wasn't allowed to go to because it was across the street, and my father's like, don't cross the street. So I never crossed the street. I think I went to Mr. Glenn's like 3 times in my entire life.
It was just a wonderful place. It was, I didn't appreciate it at the time because I was a very young child, but for example, there was a cafeteria in this building that served hot lunches. I grew up thinking that every elementary school had a cafeteria that served hot lunches, and I think I thought that until I had my own children who started school. We had a full-time librarian in the school, a full-time art teacher in the school. It was just a lot of stuff, but when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, you just come to expect it. You don't really know how good you have it. Well, when I walk into this building, it's totally different. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, I remember where there was a stage, and I remember the gymnasium. That was another thing. We had locker rooms with showers. That's not an elementary school thing in most places of the country. And they would, over the holidays, for example, Christmas vacation, they would open up the gym and have programs for the students. You could come play basketball, et cetera, over the holidays. And then they had a summer program. Actually, Charles Thornton, who was principal of the school, also headed the Shaker Heights Recreation Department. And they had, for a couple $1 a week, you could come here. It was a day camp in the summertime. And so just be back here in the summertime, it was just a place to be. You know, what is now the parking lot was our baseball diamonds. There were 2 baseball diamonds there, but they were blacktopped. And so we used rubber-coated hardballs, because if you used a leather hardball, it would just tear the cover right off the ball. And if somebody was a real good hitter from the farthest point in that parking lot, they could hit a ball that would hit the school window and break it.
Did you ever break one?
I never hit it that far.
Gave a structure, because I know also too we had, see back then the neighborhood was different. We had street clubs, they used to do caroling. We had Cub Scouts, where we used to meet down here in the gym. We used to play strikeout up here against the wall in Moreland, you know, and then you got into Little League, baseball. And so, I mean, from that being all around, being able to experience different stuff, I mean, that kind of gives you, from a mental perspective of what you could do, what's possible.
The last principal mentioned the gym. I was reminded how I had a lot of great time there. We played dodgeball and all those games, but they brought in these big bamboo sticks, and we would do this kind of Indonesian dancing or something they taught us. I think we also did square dancing, and I really I love that. And when I was in high school, we used to play and organize guitar and organize square dances. So Moreland was a great place, and the people that I was in school with, I really have fond memories of.
What kind of story? I mean, I got all kinds of stories. What kind of story? I mean, I can't think of just one story of the school. It was a great experience. We did a lot of stuff. I got subjected to a lot of things. I mean, yeah, I was in the choir. I think we didn't get the band until Woodbury or whatever. But my parents had me in music at a young age, so it was just a healthy, from an educational perspective. You know, I mean, that's one reason why my family moved over here was for the schools.
My Boy Scout troop was here, Troop 44. We also, in the gym, we used to have our meetings in the gym here and practice our marching and all our disciplinary stuff. And we planned our camping trips. We went to Beaumont. I think we went to the Johnny Appleseed Trail. All that stuff was kind of planned from here. This is like a home base for like a lot of things back then. And then I used to play football out here in this yard here, you know, after school. I used to play kickball in the yard over there.
I think that was the beginning. I mean, was the beginning of my education. I think I got a very good education in the Shaker schools all the way through. I remember when I got to college, for example, you know, at Shaker we had taken Blue Book final exams in high school, and there were a lot of students who never had that experience in high school, and they were terrified. And for those of us who had done it before, it was like, okay, so it's we've done it, we can do it, kind of thing. And it was just a very good education. Elementary school, junior high school, and then high school. So but that was the foundation, excuse me, on which all the other was built. Well, I went to Rutgers University in New Jersey, then I went to Ohio State Law School. When I got out of law school, I went to work for the Justice Department in Washington. And then I worked for the Justice Department in several other cities, moved back to Cleveland for a short while. I was with what they call the Organized Crime Strike Forces. And we started an office in Cleveland, and from here we moved to Pittsburgh, where we opened an office. Then we moved to Philadelphia, and finally I came back to Cleveland with the Justice Department in the mid-'70s, and then in '79 I left the government and went into private practice in Cleveland, and I retired about a dozen years ago.
Well, I think Shaker in general was a great place to grow up. I really got the most out of it, had lots of fun. It was a different era when we just, kids could run free. In fact, one of my memories from Moreland was my mom was going back to get her master's in social work, And so we couldn't go home for lunch every day like everyone else did. And so she gave us a little money, and my sister and I walked out the back towards Chagrin, or Kinsman it might have been called at that time then, and we made a left, and there was a diner right there. And the two elementary school kids went to the diner and had hamburgers and french fries and a Coke without any adult supervision. And that, I just can't imagine my kids when they were in elementary school doing such a thing. Yeah, so it was a great place to grow up, and I really did thrive here. After I graduated Shaker Heights High School in '73, I went to UC Santa Cruz in California, majored in biology, and then got my PhD in cell and developmental biology at Harvard Medical School area. And started my professional career at Rockefeller University, New York City for 18 years as a postdoc, assistant, and associate professor, and moved back to Shaker Heights in 2002 to take a position at the Cleveland Clinic in education and research. And now I head the molecular medicine PhD program, and I run a research lab in cardiovascular diseases. So it's a full circle. Both my sons graduated Shaker Heights High School, attended Mercer, and then Woodbury Elementary in Byron, which I think they call the middle school, and Shaker Heights High School. So it's really wonderful to be back, and still our class had a great 50th reunion, and there's still a lot of people who are local who I'm still in contact with.
Just really, that Moreland was the start, because I've told my mom, I don't know if I even got to tell my dad, because I didn't. He died when I was like 21, and I don't think I really got to tell him, but I've told my mom that how thankful I am that we moved to Shaker. The Moreland area, Moreland School, that was our entry point. And it changed our lives tremendously. I mean, it was groundbreakingly remarkable that we were put here. I mean, the education, I not specifically Moreland, but in this school system, Moreland, Woodbury, Shaker. My first year in college at Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio, we had to start, writing papers and stuff, which I had done here. And there were people who had not even done that. I'm like, wow, and I just felt like, we were prepared. We were prepared for college. We were prepared for, bigger things. I took it at AP History. We were prepared to think, to figure things out, and I felt like it was a great, this whole system, starting with Moreland, was a great training ground. And also, sports, music. I played the clarinet starting in 4th grade, starting here. Started guitar in junior high school at Woodbury. So the arts have always been a good, strong part of a Shaker curriculum. So that's been really important. The arts and athletics, and I played football. Here a little bit, but especially junior high school. I think we were undefeated, or we had like one loss in JV in junior high. And then I went to Shaker, and I had a great first year. But then at the time, it was just 10, 11, and 12 in Shaker. And so I played my first year, and then I was like, well, I'm going to spend more time on music. So I didn't play football my junior year. But one of my coaches was like, oh, you got to come back, you got to come back, you got to come back. So I was like, well, I figured my senior year I'll try to do both, So I went back and played football and my senior year, but most of the time I sat on the bench because all my buddies had been like bulking up that year, So, but I was able to make a close connection with a friend of mine who had broken her leg. So instead of, since I was playing football at the football games and she had broken her leg, we would like hang out, during the marching band practices and stuff. And that's so weird. That kind of God gives you ways to make connections with people, because she died not long after I moved back here. She went to like the first reunion I had once I moved back here, Judy Glick, and then she had cancer. But yeah, this is a great community, and being brought to this community is just something I'll always thank my parents for. and thank the school system for rocking for us. Yeah.
But that was okay. Our children, Sam was the only one that we had when we moved into Moreland. And he enjoyed very much being a student at Moreland. And then from there, he went to Woodbury. The girls were at Moreland for a while. And at the time, my husband was working, had several jobs, but he never missed the opportunity to volunteer at the school. So he was working during the day sometimes and working at night and working at Moreland. He worked so hard, they finally gave him a job. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they gave him a job as well. And I was teaching, but I also had Girl Scout group, which I started with Mrs. Perkins. And when the girls and their father, I didn't make that decision, but their father took them on a tour up near Malvern, and they loved the environment. They came back talking about the big houses and the places where their daddy said they could stay. I said, you couldn't walk in those houses and stay. Daddy, why didn't you tell them that there's many things that have to take place anyway? We finally did move, have the girls transfer Paula and Emily, because Paula didn't want to go without Emily going. Emily wasn't that excited about it at first, but it was very nice.
I was thinking about mentioning some of the people who were in my class.
Oh, please.
Because I don't know if I mentioned Pam Jenkins, Dolores, who was here, Rhonda Wilson, who graduated, we all graduated together, Charlene, Mark Dabney, Alice Knox, John Straffen, Maggie McMillan, whose father was an assistant superintendent at the time, was in our cohort that was bused. It was great. I still saw all those people all through high school, and it was always wonderful to see them, even though when you get to high school and you're taking different types of classes, or once you're in a particular schedule orientation, you just don't run into a lot of people. But it was great to have so many different friends by the time I got to the high school.
So this is Silver Bells and Cockle Shells. It's the yearly poetry book from Moreland, and there's poems in here from myself and my friends and my sister, who was 2 years older than me, and it's all here. I'm going to give it to the library to scan, but if I have time, I'll read you one poem that my sister was a co-author of that I thought was very appropriate for today. So this poem is written by Barbara Stein, Deborah Smith, who was my sister, Bennett Hirsch, and Jerry Greenberg. They were 6th graders. In kindergarten, life was really a pleasure. The fun we had, you could not measure. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that's what first grade meant to me. Reading, writing, rhythmic too, and pretty soon first grade was through. Before we knew it, second grade was here, and it was then that we learned about the lever and gear. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, all helping us to live in the community of Shaker. Then came third grade with who, where, and why. We studied everything from sea level to sky. Also, we learned how the Indians thrived. Even today, some still survive. In fourth grade, we learned GCMP. Don't know what that is, maybe some kind of new math, which brings back memories still puzzling me. Then poetry, writing became a favorite pastime. We really became efficient in meter and rhyme. In fifth grade, we learned about our brain, how we lose weight and how to gain. We also studied the United States and found out our country really rates. In sixth grade, about the world we learned, from a Chinese vase to a Grecian urn. We studied science, including weather, and we went to the French restaurant all together. Hear ye, all fifth graders. Here's some advice from us top raters. Set an example for those small tots and know that you're expected to do lots. Study hard, That's the thing to do. We made it through, and so can you.
Oh, another memory was on Arbor Day in second grade, Mrs. Silver. That tree is still there. We all got to plant a tree, and it was right over there in that neighborhood, in that little park over here. And Mrs. Silver's tree is still there. It's on Hildana, and at the corner of Hildana and Chagrin, that first tree is our tree. Yeah. So, I guess that was my third favorite memory.